Welcome to the Terrible Podcast with your hosts from SteelersDepot.com, where you can find all your latest and greatest Steelers news. It's Dave Bryan and Alex Kozora, always lit, talking Steelers. And now, here's Dave and Alex.
Welcome to the Terrible Podcast, Season 13, Episode 154. He's Dave Bryan. I'm Alex Kozora, SteelersDepot.com. Thanks for being back with us here this Friday, Steelers Nation. Dave, less than 2 weeks until the Pittsburgh Steelers report for their 2023 training camp in Latrobe, PA, and St. Vincent College. So, home stretch here, and cannot come quickly enough because I am ready for some camp action.
I tell you what's got me obviously excited about getting rolling towards the start of training camp and all like that. I don't know. Have you watched the Netflix quarterbacks series?
I haven't. How is it?
Oh my God, you want to get fired up for a seat or just get your blood going. That is so well done. I have made it through now. I don't even know how many episodes are in there. I've made it through the first 4 right now. I've been trying to knock out two a day at during the nighttime and all like that. It is very well put together, and what they do is they it's basically a recap of the season of Patrick Mahomes, Kirk Cousins, and Marcus Mariota. Those are the 3 quarterbacks that they focus on, and a lot of behind the scenes stuff and a lot of game footage, and it is well done. And the last couple episodes have been really good, talking about the injuries that they go through and the rehab that takes place during the week to get them just in a position where they're ready to play from a health standpoint. And then I think this episode 4 of it mostly dealt with the game planning and the terminology and the studying that they have to put in every week. And it really, you think that how much quarterbacks go through and really just players in general, getting past injuries and the rehab part of it, but you think you kind of know, and even as long as we've kind of covered this thing, there's a lot of things that we think that we know that we don't know because we're not behind the closed doors. But this will really you've got Netflix, don't you, or no?
I don't actually. That's why I haven't watched it yet.
Oh man, you got to subscribe maybe just for that. It is very well put together, and the thing that got me thinking along the lines here is specific, and we're fixing to talk about Kenny Pickett quite a bit. I think in this show a little bit here from an interview that he has done and kind of rankings and all like that. But, there's a lot put on quarterbacks, plain and simple. And Kirk Cousins last year, that was his first season with that head coach there. And there was a lot of feeling out process about what Kevin O'Connell was looking for, and even though Kirk Cousins has been around obviously several years, and just understanding offensive concepts and all like that, so it really kind of opens up your eyes and kind of translate it to Kenny. Kenny coming in as a rookie, head spinning anyway. Obviously, a lot of focus being on the combine and get through the draft process, and then boom, you're into training camp and into the preseason. And obviously he didn't open up the season as a starter. Mitch Trubisky did. And then, just imagine kind of, the process of Kenny coming in and being the starter, and then, Matt Canada trying to tailor things more and more to him and what he can absorb moving forward. And then obviously you get the bye week that comes along. There's a lot of layers to this thing, and it's amazing. I guess where I'm getting at here is man, it's hard on a rookie quarterback to come in right away
Sure.
and not only prepare, but to have success within that, with everything that goes along in there. And then secondly, imagine, these younger quarterbacks that go through early OC changes in their career,
Right.
and I think that probably, a lot of people obviously, and for good reason, wanted Matt Canada out last season and, wanted this team to have a new offensive coordinator. But I think you can probably, if you watch some of this stuff and then kind of relate it to the Steelers, and look, there's probably not a lot of optimism overall when it comes to Matt Canada heading into the season, and for obvious reasons. But I think the continuity, factor, and that's something I think that's been mentioned from time to time here, could play a role in helping Kenny Pickett's overall progress and maturation into the NFL. And I use maturation not for him personally maturing, but his NFL game is, everything that comes along with the NFL maturing. But oh man, if anybody's listening, I'm sure several people listening to this have Netflix and have watched it and are probably hopefully nodding their head along with me here. But, and once again, it's not things that I don't think are hugely foreign to people, but it does get you thinking if you have an open mind about the process and NFL, if you're just an NFL lover at all. And then if, as you're watching this, you kind of relate it back to maybe Kenny Pickett and the Steelers specifically, I just think it's fantastically done. How was that for an open?
Yeah, it's a great review.
Unscripted open for you.
Not in our pre-production meeting there. No, it's a great point. And I agree. I think the continuity, Pittsburgh's desire for continuity, right or wrong, was probably the driving reason behind why Matt Canada was retained as OC for an offense that went through so many growing pains and such a bumpy ride the first half of last year. I think Pittsburgh's calculation was, we don't want to have those same or similar growing pains in 2023 as we adjust to a new OC, and for Pickett and for the rest of the offense as well. Pretty young offense, the youngest in football last year. So I think that was, to me, the number one reason why Matt Canada remains as the Steelers offensive coordinator.
Yeah, look, and a lot of people say, well, man, all they do is focus on I've got a lot, and I've already liked Patrick Mahomes. I think Patrick Mahomes is a great kid. I think he's a great looking kid. I think everything about him, obviously, is play. I like his personality. I like his fire and everything that goes along with it. Yeah, I get he plays for the Chiefs, and we're not supposed to root for those guys and all like that. But there's a lot to like about him, and the process for him alone, even as a young quarterback, he's learned that how he's got his own kind of personal trainer that he works with there during the week outside of the facility that gets him ready for games. There is a lot more than just going to practice for these guys, and then not just quarterbacks. Obviously other players do this as well too. It's not unique to him. It's just that he's under the microscope here, but there's a lot that goes into this with quarterbacks, and they learn more, the longer that they get into the league, that, if you want to play and have success in this league for long periods of time, you've got to go above and beyond just what happens at practice. And I think you really see this on different degrees, and they focus on Kirk Cousins quite a bit, obviously, in this as well, too. And man, that son of a gun got beat up quite a bit last season with the Vikings. And there's a lot of, different things of rehab that he goes goes through during the week. And he tries, he shows different exercises he does to try to keep his mind sharp and keep focused and all like that. So I think the biggest takeaway that I have from this series so far, and once again, I'm only 4 episodes in, is just there's so many layers to this game overall, other than Sunday football and practice on Wednesday and Thursday and Friday, that we don't really see. And as much as we like to think that we know what happens, there's a lot that happens during the week that we don't see.
It's a great point, and I'm glad that series is highlighting that. I think the injury aspect might be the most underrated and underappreciated part of NFL players from our fan base viewpoint. I think we all as fans understand that, yes, these guys get hurt, but we really don't know what they're going through. And the guys that aren't just hurt and not playing, but the guys who are playing and battling through injuries, I mean, there's some crazy stuff these guys work through, and that probably does not get recognized enough about this guy's got, terrible injury, playing on an ankle sprain, whatever it is, something even worse, and he's gutting it out. And yes, it's affecting his performance, but if you understood what he was dealing with, you would understand the context for what you're seeing on tape.
And, Mariota, they show a segment in there with him, he's, and this is uncommon. He's got his own chef, and it's an old childhood friend of his as well, too, that pretty much comes in 6 days a week and cooks his dinners, for him. And, that's the thing, too. A lot of people see these younger players and see them make, NFL minimums of, what is it this year? 750,000, I think, overall is the minimum salary for a player. And let's assume that player doesn't get a signing bonus. If these players, those things cost money, right? These
lots of money,
a lot of money too. And you don't often hear the cost. And I understand it's all relative usually to what the player makes. I mean, obviously you got guys on multi-million-dollar contracts like Mahomes and Cousins and all like that. But, what about that player before he gets to that level? Sure. The emphasis on taking care of the body and getting the, getting the proper treatment outside of the facility and the training. And you see a lot of these other young players working, during the off season, that costs money if they have their own, performance center or whatnot that they go to. But anyway, I know that's a little bit long and it sounds like I'm paid by Netflix to review this. But anyway, that if you plug that thing in, that'll really get your juices going before training camp gets underway here.
Well, let's stick with quarterbacks because Kenny Pickett appeared on the, Green Light podcast with Chris Long in an episode that aired yesterday. And there wasn't a ton of new ground covered because Pickett's done many interviews this summer, but I thought there were a couple interesting questions that were asked of him. One was, what's your favorite coverage to see? And Pickett said 2-man, which is a man coverage defense, 2 high shell, man coverage underneath, because he liked that he could run against it. Talked about how he did that versus Miami, did that against New Orleans, and then he didn't see it the rest of the year because defenses understood you play 2-man against the mobile quarterback. You're going to give him probably some escape lanes and chances to run and rip off a good chunk of yardage. So I thought there was some interesting comments, Pickett talking about how he utilizes his legs, mobility. Obviously, that's new for Pittsburgh. Considering the last decade of Ben didn't really have anything like that. So again, as I talked about in my full breakdown, there's a line to walk between when it's the right time to run and when you should hang in the pocket more and look to throw. I thought Pickett improved there, but certainly the guy can run when the opportunity presents itself.
That's another aspect of his game as well, too, with his rookie season behind him. Obviously he's learned more about NFL defenses and kind of how they adjusted to him as they went along. I'm looking now, pulled up on Sports Info. What would you imagine? Let's see. You want man cover 2, right?
Yes, 2-man. Yep.
Let's see here. 35 dropbacks overall last season for Kenny Pickett against man cover 2, 31 attempts, 13 completions for him.
Any rushing stats on that?
Let's see.
Do they show anything like that? Pickett rattled off two of them.
Let's see. He had 1 touchdown, 1 interception, 1 sack, and 15 pressures in those. And you want rushing with that?
Yeah, I don't know if they show that, but
I can find it probably.
Okay, I mean, Pickett mentioned he's got 35 total. There was a sack, so it's might be 3 scrambles on that. If I'm kind of reading the numbers here correctly, he mentioned 2, 1 versus Miami, 1 against the Saints. I pulled that clip. That was a 23-yard gain, and then Pickett said he didn't see much of that the rest of the season. I mean, 2-man's not run a ton. It's generally kind of more of a 3rd and long type of coverage. So, I don't know if it's run a lot league wide.
They don't have SIS doesn't have it broken down by rushing against certain coverages here, but I wonder if I show it by they won't show it by game. I wonder.
But obviously, yeah, man coverage. I mean, in general, whether it's 2-man or cover 1, whatever, man coverage. Backs are turned, no vision on the quarterback, and that allows him to run if the escape lane is there.
Okay.
Anything else there from that Pickett interview? Talked about thought Chris Long had a good question. What pisses off Mike Tomlin? You don't hear that one too often. And Pickett didn't really have an immediate answer, but just said, if you're lower energy and you're not really bringing it, Tomlin's a guy that's always bringing it to the locker room and to the team each day. So that'll, be something that'll piss off Mike Tomlin.
Yeah, understandable that way. I thought overall it was a good interview with him, and I thought another, keeping on the Pickett subject here, Allen Robinson. The second is on Sirius this morning with Solomon Wilcox, and he is co-hosting that 3 hours with him, and kind of wanted to say, they obviously did an opening kind of review how things have gone with Allen Robinson so far in his time with the Steelers, and asked a little bit about Kenny Pickett and his leadership there, and and obviously what do we, people are saying, well, what do you expect him to say? You think he's going to say Kenny's not a good leader or anything like that? But here's the quote we have on him. He says, for me, coming in and seeing Kenny now going into his 2nd season, he says, man, the command that he has for a 2nd-year player is awesome. He says, I personally feel like you don't get a chance to see guys that young with command that strong as far as leading us, getting guys together, throwing after, watching film across the board. He's very experienced, and it's been fun to see, and it's been fun to be a part of. So, that goes back to us having several conversations about Pickett and the maturity that he had coming out, and, not being really concerned about, Kenny Pickett, the leader. And this, he's talked about it a little bit, going into his 2nd season, talking about, look, I know this is my team now. And I think kind of the one of the things that we recapped a few weeks ago was that, there's nothing as far as Kenny Pickett, the leader and the worker and the mentality that he has. There's nothing that's been really unappetizing at all when it comes to him. It was just good to hear, because obviously Allen Robinson's new to the organization. He's been around a lot of younger quarterbacks throughout his time. So I think that's quite the praise from Allen Robinson, saying, look, this guy's got, essentially the command of a veteran player, and he's only a 2nd-year player.
And that's the other aspect that I was about to mention in the open when we talked about that quarterback Netflix series. Is quarterback is the most, physically, mentally demanding position, I think, in all of sports, at least especially mentally, handling the entire offense, and you're responsible for every aspect of it. And then on top of that, the leadership aspect, and you're the face of the franchise, and how you carry yourself, within the media and out in public, and just your day-to-day life. I mean, you're never not the starting quarterback of the Pittsburgh Steelers. You're always that guy, whether you're on the field, in the locker room, or just in your personal life. And so for a still relatively young guy like Pickett, he is 25, but 2nd year in the NFL, 1st year full-time starter, it's a lot of pressure to deal with. I can't even imagine what that feels like. And so you add extra layers on top of that, beyond just the foundational basics of how to play the position and understanding your playbook. And then you put on top of that, leading and being the face of a young offense and the pressure that's going to be in Pittsburgh this year for this team to win, it is a lot to handle. But Pickett certainly seems capable of it. That is the book on him. Zero questions about work ethic and leadership. And again, as I always say, that alone does not guarantee and ensure greatness, being a hard worker, being a good leader. But you'll find very few quarterbacks that were great, that were not hard workers, that were not good leaders. So it's going to raise that floor and create that foundation for hopefully future on-field success.
And he just he's a smart kid overall as well too. I don't think any of this is going to be too big for him, and it does kind of make you. I found myself kind of wondering last night when watching a couple of these episodes. Some of these quarterbacks that come in, that have a lot of success, maybe in at the college level. You wonder, especially some of the smaller school kids. They've got a lot of talent, but what has prevented them from maybe being a bigger school type guy and having, success, at a bigger, Malik Willis's guy. And where I'm going with this is the mental aspect of the game, and be able to absorb things outside of, maybe you were more of a scheme generate, you were in the perfect scheme at maybe a smaller school, and your athletic ability, because Malik Willis, he made a lot of plays, right? A lot of, the thing that got you the most excited about Malik Willis and his tape was, the off schedule plays and stuff like that. But, within that, when he was on schedule within that offense, and Matt Corral's another good instance of this, a very RPO centric kind of kid, that made a lot of great throws, had success in that system. It really makes you, I guess where I'm going with this, it makes you really think back of, when you're evaluating these kids, how can you look forward past what they did in college, obviously, and can they be more than just guys that have the perfect system for them in college?
And that's probably about 80% of why teams miss on draft picks, because you can evaluate a player and understand his talent, his strengths and weaknesses. That, generally speaking, is not that difficult to do. The challenge is, making that
processing
schematically. Yeah, the processing and schematic fits, and that's certainly a factor. And if coaching staffs change and new schemes come in, does that draft pick fit the new scheme as well as he fit the scheme he was drafted into? Probably a lot of instances where he doesn't. So, I'd say a lot of reasons why these guys miss are the character and work ethic stuff, and then also just trying to evaluate, scheme and fit at the NFL level. And then you throw injury curveballs on top of that, and it's like 90% of the reason why these draft picks miss to start with. So that's what makes this thing so tricky.
Obviously, people listening to this are probably a Steelers fan, and you always have the renewed optimism every year. And man, I think this team can make the playoffs and maybe win a Super Bowl. And, that just comes with the fandom part of it. But, regardless of what happens to the Steelers in 2023, the most fascinating thing, at least in my book, is watching specifically what happens with Kenny Pickett, and that's once again, it's a Captain Obvious kind of thing. But, if you're going to have success as a franchise over a long period of time consistently, you have to have a franchise quarterback, right?
Sure.
Overall. So I really, the thing that has me most excited as we sit here on July 14th, a couple of weeks ahead of training camp and all right now, is just really looking forward to seeing the kind of progress that Kenny Pickett makes in his second season here overall.
It's the most critical aspect to the 2023 Steelers. As he goes, so does the rest of the team. And I understand, obviously, it's a run-heavy offense, and there's going to be less placed on Pickett's shoulders, but he's going to have to step up in big time moments as he did late last year. And, if Pickett doesn't lead 2 game-winning drives and they lose to the Raiders and the Ravens, we're talking about, what would that be, a 7-5 that 7-10 team, right? We're talking about, and we're having a different conversation, a different feel about how that season wrapped up as opposed to how it actually did.
Right.
Dave, I want to talk about one actually kind of piece of Steelers, hard news, as they say in the business, not from a player standpoint, but from a front office standpoint. And as much as you nerd out about the Steelers salary cap, I nerd out about their front office, and they're losing one member of their front office reportedly in Will Britt, one of their football analysts who was hired just 2 years ago, a pretty fresh face out of college. He replaced Jay Whitmire, who left last second to go to the New York Jets and remains with the Jets. And so the Cowboys, I've seen some other hires that they're making. They're really going all in on the data scientists and the football analysts, and have appeared to poach Britt from Pittsburgh to Dallas.
Yeah, it seems like they've gone through quite a few of these guys the last couple of years, right?
They have. There's been a pretty lengthy track record of losing some of their, analytical type of guys. Kareem Kasem was with Pittsburgh for a while, to be fair, but he left for Duolingo, the thing that teaches you, Spanish. That's where he left. And then he got back in the NFL with Jacksonville briefly, although that was the whole Urban Meyer thing. He left pretty quickly. He worked with the Minnesota Twins, but point is, he had left Pittsburgh. Whitmire, as I mentioned, he left, I think, pretty last second from Pittsburgh to the Jets, where he remains. And now Britt is leaving from Pittsburgh to Dallas. And, Pittsburgh's been criticized over the years for not appearing to have the most analytically forward approach. It seems to be maybe valued a bit more under Omar Khan, although you see them losing Britt. And so I imagine he'll get replaced. They do have one other football analyst on their staff in Tosin Kazim, who's kind of part-time scout, part-time analyst. Again, I think they'll replace Britt here before the season begins, but is notable because there's a pretty good trend of them losing these guys.
Yeah, there is. And it makes you wonder, just how deep they are into the analytics side of it, how much they value it.
Yeah. And, I think Omar probably values it more than Kevin Colbert. I don't think that's going to be a stretch to say overall. This probably could be a salary type thing. Obviously, I'm sure Dallas will pay well and maybe pay more than what Pittsburgh would. So we'll see, but wanted to note that because it is one piece of news that has come out this week.
All right.
Let's see where we're at here. Patrick Peterson, he's on, I think, one of these golf events. He's a big-time golfer and had an interesting quote, though. A reporter from Sports Illustrated asked him about Steelers' goals in 2023, and he wants number 7, hopefully a Lombardi, but also interceptions. He wants 7 interceptions in 2023, and that's going to be his goal. So let me ask you, Dave, how realistic is that goal?
Well, let's see. Looking back at his career stats, let's see. I think he hit 7 once in his career, didn't he?
You said what? 7 picks?
7 picks in 2012.
Okay. Yeah, he had 5 last year, so he came close.
He had 5. But I mean, if you go back and look, you can't control how you get these things, right?
Sure, to an extent.
Some of those were look, I think the one against they showed one last night, the one against was it the Bills, right, in the end zone? That was a key interception to win that game against the Bills last year that Patrick Peterson had, kind of undercutting one right there in the end zone. I think he had one key one against the Saints, which was a nice one, but the other 3 that he had were more hugely ill-advised kind of throws, if you will, overall. Sure. If you want to kind of add context to these things here, is 7 unthinkable? No, he's done it before. We've seen players get 7. I would like, I guess where I'm going at is you should set goals that push you to get them. This will certainly push him to reach that goal overall. I certainly think 5, a repeat of last season. And look, if this team's going to win games in 2023, we're going to have to see those takeaways up there, right? And we talked a little while ago, a couple shows ago, I think, about T.J. Watt and going. I did a deep dive into the career takeaways the Steelers have had that have been directly that TJ Watt was directly involved in. And obviously, TJ's got a couple of interceptions in there. Most of the turnovers related to him were either strip sack related or him recovering a fumble that somebody else forced. We saw this team do a good job, I think, last year with interceptions, right?
Yeah, they tied for the league lead last year.
Right. So if they're going to have short field results and putos, as I like to call them, points off of turnovers here. So do I think if you were to put the over under at, let's say, 6.5 for him specifically on interceptions, I'd be foolish not to take the under, but man, if he gets 7, that's probably impacted a few games along the way.
No doubt. Yeah, like you said, set goals high. That's the right way to approach that. Do I think he hit 7? No. I mean, who was the last Steeler to pick off 7 passes? I think Troy was, I believe, the last one and the last corner to do that. I have no idea who the last cornerback to pick off 7 passes were. But as you said, Pittsburgh, they're an aggressive ball hawking secondary. I think that's been the biggest impact that Terrell Austin has brought to the Steelers. You certainly saw a direct correlation between his hiring and the Steelers' takeaways. Now, granted, you trade for Minkah Fitzpatrick, your takeaways go up regardless of your coaching staff, but the combination there, I think, has boosted those numbers. Pat Peterson, a heady guy, maybe he floats around, plays different positions, plays more kind of robber and baiting quarterbacks into making bad throws, bad decisions, and that could get him a couple of picks. But do I think he's going to get 7? No, but it is good to have that bar set pretty high.
We've talked about this recently. You want to talk about something to get excited about on the defensive side of the ball when it comes to this team is the secondary. And we talked recently about DeMonte Casey and how great it will be to hopefully have him coming out to shoot ready to go in week 1, as opposed to not having him until after the bye week last season. He obviously had a couple of picks there. He had one in his first game, didn't he? Against New Orleans, didn't he? First game back, Casey?
Did he? I know he had the one against the Browns. That sounds right. I everything's kind of running together for me at this point in the offseason. I remember the one in week 18 against Cleveland on that crosser that he picked off Watson. Did he get him in against the Saints?
Remember.
I'm pulling up the game log here. Yes, you're right. He did have one against the Saints.
Okay. And he obviously had that one at the end of the season against the Browns and all. But I guess where I'm going with this is, we've talked about what's the safety road. How are they going to use guys like, we know Mika's going to be on the field, but when you talk about guys like they've added Keanu Neal and obviously have Casey coming back, what's it going to look like with how creative can you get kind of with rotating those guys in and playing more to the strengths of each of those guys? Obviously, Casey more of a free safety type, but he can obviously play in the box, good tackler. And, Neal is a guy that's quasi off the ball linebacker, best suited to kind of play that in the box, strong safety role that Terrell Edmonds has played and all like that. And then you throw in the fact that, how quickly can you move guys like, Joey Porter Jr. Along and get him on the field on a regular basis. And, there was an interesting stat from Pro Football Focus yesterday that got highlighted on Levi Wallace and, how he performed against go routes, last season and all like that. So
did they say he was the best cornerback in football against go routes? Was that the
yeah, graphic? I thought it was number 1 overall. Yeah. And I went immediately to try to find, they don't have it broken down. We could probably get this from, other sources here. Maybe I'll try to research that today for one of you guys, maybe you to write about and all like that. How many actual go routes did he have to defend?
True. Good point. But still, I imagine
there had to be a minimum in there. I don't think they would I don't think it was one. It was 2 go routes defended, both of them. He's number 1. Right. I would imagine with them, they have some minimums there. So we'll try to effort those numbers, but that kind of came out of nowhere, yesterday.
Yeah, I mean, I thought Levi had a good second half of the season. I think he is one of those more underrated, underappreciated guys, even from the Steelers' own fan base. I understand Porter's excitement and Trice's excitement. Wallace will never be a number one high level kind of guy, but I mean, his numbers were very comparable to Cam Sutton last year, who had a good season and got paid handsomely by Detroit. So yeah, I mean, Levi's one of those, he's a solid, consistent guy, and you need some of those guys. You want corners that can be super, super flashy, but he's really steady. And dude also had 4 picks last year, which was a career high for him. So he made some impact plays as well.
All right. Where to from here?
TJ Watt will move down the defensive frontier and go to TJ Watt as you continue your I'm trying to find the name for it. Your right tackle, better know a right tackle series, something like that with TJ Watt. And so I know you're kind of getting closer towards the end of this thing, the right tackles that Watt will face. Any additional conclusions or thoughts? I think generally the thought has been TJ Watt has some pretty favorable matchups this year.
Yeah, and he's got a couple of tough ones in there too. I tell you what did stick out though, when getting a little bit deeper into this, when you look at week 10, week 12 and week 16 overall. Week 10, they get the Packers, and you get a guy like Zach Tom, who, when was he? He was a 4th round draft pick in 2022 out of Wake Forest. And, presumably, obviously this is past the middle of the season there, but you would think as we sit here right now, he stands to be the starting right tackle for the Packers. They got obviously a new quarterback, right? This hitting your uncle's Packers, right?
Mm-hmm.
Aaron Rodgers no longer there. They've obviously going through some changes within that organization, and a younger quarterback, and kind of trying to revamp that offense a little bit post Aaron Rodgers there. To me, this really sets up as a, at least on paper, this far out, really sets up for as a good matchup for Watt overall. There's going to be, a handful of tackles, at least if these guys all stay healthy, that I consider pretty big advantages for Watt, as we say there. And looking at this thing this far out, I think the matchup against Zach Tom really favors TJ Watt right now. You get into weeks 12 and 16. These are obviously games against the Bengals, but who is Jonah Williams? As
a right tackle. Yeah, we don't, as a left tackle, he's been better, I guess, but bumpy. As a right tackle, it's not his preferred position.
Right. But he did play, going back and looking at actual, where he played at Alabama, he played a considerable amount at right tackle, or the last time that he did it was way back in 2016 at Alabama.
Okay.
So it's not like this position is foreign to him. It's just he hasn't played it in quite a while. And obviously at the NFL level, since coming in, he's been primarily a left tackle. And, there's the whole thing with him earlier in the offseason. It really looked like he wanted out.
Yeah, I felt like he was going to get dealt. I guess they're going to hold on to him now.
Yeah, it kind of it sounds like he's changed his tune now, at this point. I'll do what the team, asked me to do and all like that. But, let's face it, since coming to the NFL, Jonah Williams it's been a bumpy ride for him. And now you're having to switch over to a new side. Look, he's still got pedigree on his side. And once again, it's not like, an instance here of, like one or two other tackles that Watt will face in 2023, where, this guy's playing on the right side now, and this is going to be foreign to him. How's this going to go? At least he has done it throughout his, at least in his college career. It's just going to be interesting to see him make that transition. And more specifically, are there continued bumps in the road for him? So, we got a long way to wait until we see this matchup. Week 12 is the first of 2 meetings between the Bengals and the Steelers there. So, rest assured, with Cincinnati being a division, we're going to it's going to be interesting to watch his progress over there at right tackle in those first, several games before he has to play Watt.
Presumably, as you just referenced, he'll be a bit more comfortable at that new position by week 12. If it was week 1, it's a different calculation than if it was week 12, as it was in the opener last season. So a note there. But still, I think it's a good matchup for TJ Watt.
All right. And then moving past, let's see, I think, did we talk about the Tennessee situation?
Yeah, we mentioned them. Yeah, the unknown of how that offensive line is going to be constructed.
Okay, and then I think moving past that, TJ Watt, who the heck's going to be the Cardinals starting right tackle come week 13? They've obviously got old man Kelvin Beachum over there. From where I sit right now, I think there's a chance Kelvin Beachum is that guy come week 13. However, what are they going to do? I've read a lot of different things about Paris Johnson Jr., obviously their first round draft pick. Some people are speculating, that are closer to the organization that he might even be a guard to start off with
because they have DJ Humphries, right? And he's one of their guys.
Right. And he's being paid. Now, you would think at some point, I mean, you didn't spend an first round draft pick for Paris Johnson to be a guard, did you? Or did you?
Right. No, I think Beachum probably just becomes a swing tackle backup is my guess. Humphries and Johnson start.
But didn't, where did Paris Johnson mostly play, coming out of Ohio State, left tackle, right?
Right.
Correct?
So, so maybe you could move Humphries to right tackle and Johnson at left tackle. And Humphries is going to start. I think Johnson is going to start. And so you just figure out which sides they're going to play on.
Yeah, and I guess at this point, that's what makes doing this series kind of tough, is you're trying to look way weeks into the future there. So, look, if it is Beachum, you don't last as a seventh round. It's hard to believe he's lasted this long. I mean, it's a testament, because I can remember Beachum in that first handful of preseason games when he was with the Steelers as a rookie. I wondered if he's going to make the initial 53-man roster.
I remember those articles. He had false starts and just looked small and just struggled out there early on.
And they played him a little bit at guard, and you kind of wonder, what is he? Is he a guard? Because he had one of those, he's high cut, but kind of had that bubble butt to him, though, on top of it. Made you kind of wonder, is he a tackle or is he a guard? Look, you don't last in the NFL as long as Kelvin Beachum has lasted if you don't have the talent there. And sure. I think obviously at this point of his career, he is a lot more right tackle than he is anything else. And at this point of his career, he's more technician than anything else, right?
Yeah, that's probably fair to say. He's probably always been that. I mean, he was a good athlete, but certainly one of the smaller offensive tackles in recent memory. And that's why some people thought he would profile as a guard, but he's actually a better tackle than he was a guard. So yeah, kudos to him. Great person, great community member, but I imagine he'll be the backup. Although again, by that point in the season, injuries, who will the Cardinals quarterback be? Will Kyler be back by that point? I think, but who the heck knows?
Yeah, that's another great point. And just people watching his overall, is he going to completely be a bust, by the middle, or, not long after he finally gets into the lineup, and we don't know when that will be with him coming off that injury. So, that's another tough thing about doing this series, is you're looking all these weeks ahead, and some of these are pretty cut and dry. As long as the guy is healthy, it's easy to predict X player will be the right tackle in that game. But you do have certain situations, like with the Titans and with the Cardinals here, where you're kind of wondering who is going to be the right tackle in that game. With New England in week 14, it looks pretty cut and dry that Riley Reif is going to be that guy, is at least where we sit here right now, assuming he stays healthy. But he's not the player he once was. Obviously a pedigree type guy, turning 35 years of age in December as well. They target him early in free agency this past offseason, paid him $5 million this year. I would look for the Patriots to, what does Bill Belichick usually do when he goes into games, both offensively and defensively? He tries to take the number one player away on both units overall. And as we sit here this early out, I don't know how far Bill Belichick looks ahead, but I'm saying, man, I no way I can let TJ Watt be a game wrecker in this game, right?
Sure. And I think they've added some tight ends and boosted that group. And so just watch what the Bills do. If Belichick wants to watch how to handle TJ Watt, I think Buffalo's come up with some of the best game plans against Pittsburgh's edge rushers with the tight ends chipping and those guys staying in, kind of even sometimes the running backs will kind of align his wings and just really, never let these guys get started. So I think that's going to be the approach the Patriots take.
And look, you go with Riley Reif a couple years ago. He was with Cincinnati, so Reif and Watt have a little bit of a history together. And I think overall in those couple of games last season, obviously the first one, Watt, had his injury and all there. But when Watt came back in that second game there, it's not like Watt went crazy in that game.
Right. So, yeah, we'll see. TJ Watt has to be healthy. I mean, that's the number one, part of all of this. But obviously, assuming that he is, it should be a big, you're thinking 20 plus sacks for him. Can he get back to that number?
Man, when you roll, and another aspect of this too, and the Colts was one of the ones that I did as part of this as well too. And you go back and you remember back to that Colts game, wasn't that the one that he got chipped in the ribs on? And even after he returned later on in the season, and I think TJ has mentioned this as well too. He was there wasn't a lot of full health TJ at certain points last season there. So, if you get a fully healthy TJ Watt right out of the chute and he kind of minimizes those nicks and bumps and bruises along the way, and you look at, the prospective tackles that, he's going to be facing, the right tackles along the way, it's hard not to come away with thinking that, he could be upper double digits and make a push for 20 again.
He even recently revealed he had a thumb injury, and I went, he had a thumb injury? Didn't know that. Never was on an injury report or anything. I know the ribs were a problem for him. So yeah, he dealt through just a lot of crap last year.
And, but my main takeaway by doing this series and forcing myself to go deeper into some of these tackles he'll face is I feel pretty good about the prospects of TJ Watt making a run at a second defensive MVP.
All right, Dave, let's get through your 90 and 30 series. Talk about what the names you've written about since our last podcast. We'll start things off, if I'm picking up where we left off correctly, with Ryan McCollum, second-year guy. I've talked about him some. I think second-year guy, I should say, for Pittsburgh, signed midway through camp last year. He's got some NFL experience, played 100 snaps in Detroit in 2021. He's got size. He can play center. He can play guard. That backup center spot wide open. Not saying it confidently will be McCollum, but I think he's a guy that could quietly make some noise this summer.
Yeah, look, when you look at, we've talked about that backup center position quite a bit. I think the biggest threat to him, when you look at guys like him and Kendrick Green specifically, I think McCollum could potentially be a big threat to Kendrick Green. And I think McCollum's biggest threat at this point, with a couple of weeks to go before training camp starts, is somebody that's not on the roster right now.
The field, yeah.
Yeah, the field, if you will, at this point here. So, to his credit, he was with this team last season, so he knows the scheme. He knows what to expect. The blocking style and everything that this team wants to do. He does have experience not only at the NFL, but obviously at the college level at the center position here. So this is going to be a kid in McCollum that it's going to be quite interesting to watch what happens as the rest of the summer progresses. Will this team, I think this team will take a long look at him and give him every opportunity to win the backup job. But within that, I think the tape and the practices will speak volume. And more importantly, the closer we get to week one, is will this team go out and outside the organization to find a guy that they want to be their backup?
Yeah, it'll be an ongoing battle and evaluation internally and externally. So it is going to be one of those things that isn't the most exciting battle to talk about, but it will be an important one this summer.
All right, Anthony McFarland Jr., a guy we talked quite a bit about. things obviously haven't gone his way first couple seasons through the NFL here. They did re-sign him to reserve future contract right away after the 2022 season ended. He's now taking part in his third training camp. He knows what to expect when it comes to that. I think he has said, right, that he knows he's going to have to make some sort of special teams contributions here. Even so, it's going to be a tough road for him, I think.
Yeah, it's a little bit of your favorite thing, the meeting with the two Bobs. What exactly do you do here? Anthony McFarland, I'm not really sure what his role would be. Limited on special teams, lacks the size and the power that Pittsburgh typically looks for with that number 3 running back. Does have the experience. Thought he had a decent camp last year and made some plays against the Colts, so I don't want to dismiss him entirely. I mean, he has that veteran edge, compared to some of the rookies like Alfonso Graham and Darius Higgins, but it's a little bit of a surprise he's still around, and this may be his last lap around the track.
And he's got some young competition in there with a few younger other running backs trying to get his spot as well too. So, yep. Can those guys make a bigger impact on special teams than maybe he can, and maybe can they show something on offense as part of that in case they have to see the field?
For sure. So it's going to be a real battle, a really fun, intense competition with that third running back spot. I think it's going to be one of the most fun ones to watch. It's not going to be incredibly consequential out of the gate, but number 3 running back, it's doubtful that Najee Harris, Jaylen Warren will play the entire season and not miss any sort of time. And in this kind of more committee type system, one of those guys goes down. That number 3 is number 2 that's going to have a role on offense. And so that expectation and that thought could change in an instant if one of your top 2 guys misses time.
All right, next guy on the list, Dan Moore Jr. There's not a lot that hasn't already been that we haven't said about him and the situation that he's in. To his credit, came out of the chute as a draft pick in 2021 and played in 34 of 34 regular season games and started every one that he suited up for at left tackle. It's been a bumpy ride for him at left tackle so far. This team obviously goes out and trades up in the first round and drafts Broderick Jones, who's the heir apparent to one of those tackle spots for sure. And Cora Ford's got a healthy contract over on that side, so that puts Dan Moore Jr. obviously at left tackle, the position that Broderick Jones is a lot more familiar with under the microscope here. It feels like a matter of when, not if, Dan Moore Jr. gets overtaken. How long can he hold off the rookie?
It's a fair question. I am a bit of a Dan Moore truther and defender. I think he's been better than people give him credit for. I've seen the progression. I know he got thrown into the fire as a 4th-round rookie and saying, all right, man, you're starting week 1 out of the gate. That wasn't probably the plan, but that's the reality of what happened for him. I know he's, had some things to work on, especially dealing with power and bull rushes. He's talked about improving his anchor. I think he's a really hard worker, a really good kid. Obviously, Jones is the draft pick. He will play probably sooner than later, but I think it's going to be a really, really good battle between Moore and Jones. And as I wrote earlier this offseason, Moore will not give this job up without a fight. It's going to be a really good battle.
Right. I agree. I think as I ended this outlook paragraph here with him, I think there's a decent chance that Moore winds up being the Steelers' week 1 starter at left tackle. And if that's the case, he will have no room for error with the rookie first-round draft pick right behind him. Once, however, Moore is eventually moved aside for Jones, he should become the primary backup at both tackle spots.
And if Moore wins the job, his prize is Nick Bosa and Myles Garrett, which may unfortunately send him to the bench sooner than he should, because those are obviously 2 difficult matchups, but you could see that playing out.
Right, exactly.
All right, next up is Tanner Morgan, undrafted free agent quarterback out of Minnesota. Once thought to be a potential first-round draft pick and is a highlight of his Gophers career, but now he's number 4 quarterback. And will he be Oladokins?
You got to it before I could.
Oh, did you have that? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to steal your thunder there.
No, I just if that's a verb or an adjective or I don't know what it is, but. Will he get Oladokined during training camp? How many reps?
Mm-hmm.
You got a second-year quarterback in Kenny Pickett. You obviously want to get him as many reps as you can throughout the rest of the summer, and that includes preseason as well too. Mitch is obviously going to have to get his reps, and as you've got a lot of comfort per se in Mason Rudolph, and at a uber ultra cheap price as well too with him. So it's not like you save money there. I wonder how much work Morgan's going to get.
I think he'll get a bit more than Oladokin last year, but probably not much more. And will he even get into a game? Will he have enough reps in practice to get end of a first or second, third preseason game? I'm not confident in that, but at least it wasn't a draft pick. And if it is Oladokin, hopefully he gets a ring. Morgan does, like Oladokin did last year with the Chiefs.
Right. So, just the main question with him is, how much do you see him during training camp, and how much do the rest of us see him during the preseason?
Yeah, I think the answer to that for both of us is minimal exposure, but we'll be tracking, we'll be charting. We love our charts and data during training camp. Tanner Muse, Dave, do you think there's any chance he could have a defensive role as a former safety, as a coverage kind of guy?
Oh, it's going to be interesting. Here's the thing when it comes to Muse. Him and Nick Kwiatkowski kind of feel like, the sort of the same person here, battling for potentially one spot overall. Muse, boy, you remember back to the athletic profiles of him coming out of Clemson, and kind of Muse being that Planet Theory type player, if you will. But the problem with that is none of that's really, teams have had a tough time trying to figure out where he needs to play, and if they can get him on the field regularly on the defensive side of football. He's kind of had a tough transition, if you will, kind of being that quasi inside linebacker safety kind of player. He logged just 80 snaps on defense in 2022 with the Seahawks, another 325. Make no mistake about it. When it comes to Muse and Kwiatkowski, Danny Smith knows who these guys are, for sure there. I guess what you're asking, is this a more athletic Robert Spillane?
Yeah, you think about, Mark Barron made that transition from safety to linebacker, and obviously this team signed Cole Holcomb. You would expect him to be the 3-down guy. What if Holcomb were to get hurt or just really struggle? I mean, Muse was signed for special teams. He was signed to really replace Marcus Allen, and this team lost a lot of special teamers, including Allen, Benny Snell, Derek Watt, Spillane, etc. And so when you see Kwiatkowski, when you see Muse get signed, it's in large part due to that. But I'm just wondering, I mean, he's a little Miles Killebrew-like, where they were good athletes in college and Killebrew stayed at safety. Probably should have moved to linebacker. He's really not a safety. Muse made that transition, but they just kind of turned into, quality special teams guys.
Yeah, it just makes you kind of wonder what has happened so far that's prevented him from living up to that draft stock, Yeah,
just position fit, and I don't think he was as athletic on tape as he was testing coming out of Clemson.
So, I mean, is he a guy that could potentially get some snaps here and there? And who do you pull off the field when he's on it?
Yeah, all good questions there, but we'll keep an eye on that in training camp. The next one here, Toby Ndukwe. He's an undrafted rookie from Sam Houston State, tryout guy. Didn't initially sign, but circled his way back about a week later. Obviously a tough path there, but we'll see. There's always pass rushers that seem to surprise in camp.
Yeah, super tough path, specifically to the 53 with him. It would take a lot of unfortunate things to happen and breaks to go his way for him to make the 53-man roster. And then when you look at the other young outside linebackers on the roster, you got Quincy Roche now back with the organization, and then David Perales was one of their 6 original undrafted free agents. And Ndukwe is going to have to make his mark specifically on special teams. It's just a tough road for him overall. Can he even stay on the roster throughout the entire summer?
Yeah, at least there's no cut downs, but
Right.
when injury takes place, he may get the HEFO.
He's one of those end of the lines kind of guys, and if you
Mm-hmm.
get short
True.
at the end of the line somewhere else in another position group, you kind of wonder. He's definitely going to have to stay healthy. He can't afford to miss any time, or else he'll be waived injured in a heartbeat there. So I think the overall best case scenario with him is he lasts on the 90-man roster throughout the rest of the summer, shows enough prowess whatever reps he does get as an outside linebacker, and then how does he do on special teams. So I think it'll be a huge accomplishment for him if we're sitting here come week one and says, well, Toby made the practice squad.
Right. That's a great point. He reminds me of that Tomlin quote from the pivot last year. I'm paraphrasing, but sometimes your time is short because of circumstances that are out of your control, and sometimes your time is extended because of circumstances. All that to say that injuries elsewhere may impact his ability to stick around.
All right, Keanu Neal, we've had a lot of conversation. There's not too much more to add right here other than it's going to be real interesting to see how he gets his snaps carved out for him and at whose expense. You would have to think that, some 3 safety dime type packages maybe is one way to carve out snaps for him. Could he be could he be this team's early down 1st and 10 strong safety type?
That's my expectation to start. I mean, he's the Edmonds replacement. He's not as athletic and probably not quite as good as Edmonds was, but they're pretty much the same guy. They're box type of safeties. They're hitters. They're not going to offer much in coverage. Edmonds, I think, was offering more at the end of his career than what Neal's going to offer in 2023. But yeah, I think 1st and 10, box strong safety. Does he have a role in dime packages on 3rd and long? Is he going to come down and be that dime linebacker next to Holcomb the way Edmonds often was last year? We'll see, but he's here for the run defense and the hitting ability.
Could by the end of the 2023 season, if this defense does plays up to what they hope they get from this unit, and they get the turnovers and just a good season by the defense overall, is there a possibility we look back at the signing of Keanu Neal as being, man, they really got a lot of value out of this guy?
I don't know if I would go that far. They're going to get some snaps out of him.
Could he play 500 snaps?
I mean, as a starting strong safety, assuming that's what he is, then yeah, that's probably pretty realistic. In the quality of those snaps, I think will be okay. As long as he's not a liability in coverage and missing a bunch of tackles, then I'll take it.
What does he need to do to be considered an upgrade in 2023 over Terrell Edmonds in the snaps he would have played?
That's a good question. That's tough for me to answer. I mean, if he made some plays in coverage, then that would be probably an upgrade. I'm not really expecting that based on his, skill set and track record. Edmonds was just one of those like steady, available guys. I mean, this guy's playing 1,000 snaps each season, every season. And so it's kind of a tough bar because I don't expect Neal to come away with 5 interceptions. I mean, if he made some splash plays and forced fumbles and picks, then that's probably how he becomes the upgrade.
He's been in the NFL a little while now. I'm surprised he's well under 30 years of age still.
How old is he?
What is he, 27, 28?
Really? Still that young? Yeah, it feels like he's like 33 or something.
It really does. It feels like he's been around the NFL for a long. Let me pull up his age specifically here. He is about to turn 28 12 days from now when camp opens.
Yeah, that is... He feels a lot older than that.
Right. Now, this is a guy that obviously has had his share of injuries so far during his NFL career. That's impacted. And he's another guy that, where is his best fit? He's played free safety. He's played some strong safety. He's even Dallas a couple years ago was off the ball linebacker with them. So my main takeaway when looking at Keanu Neal heading into the season is can they, A, can he stay healthy and stay on the field, obviously? And B, can they maximize his ability and best use him where he best fits in that defense and get every ounce out of him?
Yeah, I think he's a strong safety, closer to the line of scrimmage kind of guy. It will be tough to rotate him. That's where obviously Casey's going to come in and do that. And, Neal and Casey played together for a little bit, so maybe that helps slightly. But yeah, he's going to be a guy that should work within 8 yards of the line of scrimmage.
All right, Trey Norwood. It kind of feels like when we sit here right now, he could potentially be outside the bubble, right? Swiss Army knife type player that's had some kind of problems adjusting to the NFL game so far, especially in some coverage situations. When I think of first thing that I think of when I think of Trey Norwood, I think of angle of tackles.
Meaning,
I don't think
bad angles.
I think he takes a lot of bad angles that show up on tape. First and foremost,
his tackling last year, it's never been good, but last year it was really, really poor.
And obviously going to have to stick out as a core special teamer. While he does have some experience in that phase of the game, he's only managed 6 total tackles in his first 2 seasons, despite playing 358 total snaps on those units so far. So, I think as we sit here right now, it might come down to how many in that room do they keep? He might need a break number wise.
Yeah, I haven't put together the whole roster construction, but might be getting a little bit tight for him. But I think it's less about even that, but just more about his play. And the guy's got to be able to tackle better. I mean, I think he can cover. I think the tackling and a special teamer that can't tackle is a hard road to live. So I think he's squarely a bubble player that needs to have a big summer.
We won't be surprised though come week 1 if he's a member of the practice squad, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's just one of those things. I know they've done it before, but if you're on the roster for 2 years and then you're going backwards with practice squad, I know you can keep a bunch of those guys.
We saw Marcus Allen do it.
Yeah, no, I know. I mean, they have done that before with several names. So no, it wouldn't surprise me. He is versatile, and if you can put him there, you gotta. Is it 16-man practice squad? I know I asked you about this a couple weeks ago. It's 16.
I'm working under the assumption it is.
Okay, I just they changed it and then they expanded it for COVID, but 14, 16, you got a bunch of spots there. You might as well keep a guy that's played in the NFL, played for your team. So yeah, that would make sense.
All right. Let's see. James Nyamwa comes out of he is the Merrimack kid, right?
Right.
1 year at Merrimack and previously played at Curry College over there. The thing that sticks out the most when you look at him, and I believe he was one of the original 6 undrafted free agents this year as well too. His path obviously to the NFL came via the small school route. He is a measurable kid, and that's where it starts with him. Not overly the thing you would hope that these guys taking this small school route would have had mega production at the small school level, but that wasn't really necessarily the case with him. However, he does fit the measurables that they love when it comes to the defensive end, defensive tackle spots. It's an incredibly tough path merely as a measurable small school kid. And I think he's along the lines of another guy on this roster that he better hope, lines outside of his position stay long, because it's going to be incredibly tough for him, I think, to stick on the 90 through no fault of his own, even stick on the 90-man roster. And if he does, I think that's a testament to him overall, and B, have some luck involved with it. And there might be an outside chance that he can warrant being signed to the practice squad.
Yeah, my exposure to him is obviously pretty minimal considering the small college, the lack of tape. He's a rookie, but I have maybe a different take. I think he's an interesting guy, measurable standpoint, pretty good athlete. Yeah, the production wasn't overwhelming, but I don't know if that's more scheme or retention related or whatever the case was. And Pittsburgh's D-line just feels like there aren't a lot of guys behind Ogunjobi and Haywood in terms of defensive ends. Now you had Keanu Benton and Fehoko, and those are more the nose tackle to start types. I think Watts will play up and down the line. Loudermilk to me's on the bubble. Go back to Leal and what he is and all that kind of stuff. But I think this is a guy that, probably is not going to make the 53 because trying to make that jump is a big jump. Marry Mack to the Pittsburgh Steelers, to the NFL, but maybe practice squad. I think he's a guy that, again, having the size and the measurables is hard to find. So I want to keep an eye on, and I'm going to work on the name here. It's Nyamwaya. Oh, I'm going to really have to work on that.
I think the best way to classify him is he's a small school developmental player for this team this summer.
Yeah, that's a good one sentence way, but I think that could lend itself to practice squad because this team needs some defensive line depth. It's really, if anything, if there was one thing you wanted to maybe, go out there and sign early in camp, it might be one of those more veteran defensive linemen, defensive end types.
All right. I think we have us all caught up on the series there.
Yeah. Anything else, Dave, you want to get to before we get to some reader emails and close out today's show?
What'd you think about what Ben had to say about not throwing in the offseason?
Yes, Ben's offseason training of no training was actually his offseason training. Yeah, I figured people would enjoy that. But I mean, I understood what he was saying because you throw so much during the year. And the bottom line is it worked for Ben. Whether it works for other quarterbacks, I don't know. But it worked for Ben. You can't argue with the results. And I put the clip in there because I thought about it as I was writing it. The interview that he did with Chris Sims years ago, and Sims is peppering him with questions about, Ben, what's your workout like? And your mechanics are flawless. Like, how do you grip the football? Are you a 2-and-5 guy? And Ben's like, I have no idea what any of this means. I just throw the football. And that is just like classic Ben.
I'd venture to say that Kenny has thrown a lot this summer.
Yeah, I think Kenny has thrown more this summer than Ben threw in the last 10 off seasons that he had in his career. But as Ben said, he was a workout. He says he was a workout guy early in his career, then scaled things back. Pickett's young. I imagine at some point maybe Pickett would scale things back too. But you certainly see in this new age, everybody's got a quarterback coach, personal quarterback coach, and this, regimented off-season schedule. And, that wasn't as much a thing back in Ben's early days. And, by the end of his career, when it became more in vogue, he was older and didn't feel the need to do it. And again, it worked for him. So as long as it worked for him, who are we to say otherwise?
All right, let's jump into the email machine here. Larissa writes in, hi, guys. Thanks for the great offseason coverage. Cannot wait for the season to start. It's funny going into the year. I thought center and inside linebacker were the biggest needs, and I was certain they would address these in the draft. Those are the core positions of Steelers history. I know we did add via free agency, but I was almost certain we would definitely get an elite inside linebacker and center in the draft. Don't get me wrong. I loved our draft. Do you think it was because lack of talent for centers and inside linebacker in the draft? Also, who do you think will be covering the number one receivers game 1 and 2? Who is our shutdown corner on Deebo Samuel and Amari Cooper week 1 and 2? Thanks again for getting me through some boring sports periods here. Look, I mean, you could have, we said this before the draft. It just felt like there was so many holes and not enough picks, right?
Mm-hmm. Right. Can't fill everything.
You can't fill everything. And look, I thought Mason Cole played better in his first season in Pittsburgh than what I expected. I think you can definitely win some games and get by with Mason Cole in 2023. Also, the center class was, I mean, it just felt like a kind of the run-of-the-mill center class overall. I mean, there were there's obviously one or two that's going to end up sticking, I think, and have long careers. But I don't think the center class overall, top to bottom, was as exciting as maybe the previous year.
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure on the comparison. I'd have to go back and think. I mean, Pittsburgh did their homework. I just think it was twofold. One, as we just mentioned, you can't draft everything. There's a lot of positions this team needed to fill. Cornerback, offensive tackle were their top two priorities. And then, get a guy like Benton in that mid-second round was pretty important. And you do have Mason Cole. And usually when you're drafting a center high, it's kind of, we want this guy to play right away. And Cole was going to be your starter. So there was less urgency to do that. I think maybe they should have signed a veteran or maybe kept J.C. Hassenauer around, tendered him or something. But I wasn't too mad at not using a high draft pick on a center because that guy probably would have sat his rookie year. And that's not usually how it goes when you're drafting offensive linemen early.
I think Larissa, I think maybe we've talked about this recently. I think both those positions you could see early in the 2024 draft.
Yes,
from where we sit
definitely.
right now.
I think off-ball linebacker, this team is not invested enough draft-wise, as they should. It's been a lot more free agents and a lot less picks. There have been picks. Devin Bush, obviously. People forget Buddy Johnson was a terrible pick by the Steelers. I knew it was a fourth rounder, but I mean, this guy was just gone. He played like 6 games as a rookie, like 2 tackles, and then cut outright last year. I think that's one of those forgotten misses by Colbert. But yeah, this team's going to have to draft. Watch out, Jeremiah Trotter Jr. Jonathan's talked about him. That feels like a Steeler next year.
All right. Who do you think's covering the number 1 receivers in game 1 and 2, Alex?
No one in particular, because Pittsburgh plays sides. They don't shadow. They haven't done that in a decade plus. And so they have a left corner and a right corner. And so they don't really match up against particular personnel. So it'll be the combination of all those guys.
All right, from Brett now. Hey, Dave and Alex, I had a quick question for you. Which current offensive lineman, if any, will be the next to get another contract from the Steelers? He says, to me, it's Dan Moore Jr. I think both he and Okorafor will be free agents at the same time, and I suspect they sign Moore to play right tackle and let Okorafor walk. If not him, then it may be Daniels or Jones, he says. Thoughts on that? Also for Alex, most underrated current Steeler. He says, my vote goes to James Daniels. He has been very good and mostly invisible, both nationally and within the fan base. He says his all-time vote is Hardy Nickerson or Thomas Everett. He says, I watched both of them and they were outstanding. Everett was a Pro Bowler, but was overshadowed by Rod Woodson, and Nickerson was an all-pro caliber player 4 times in Tampa after he left, was overshadowed by the inside linebackers that came after him, Levon Kirkland, Chad Brown, Kendrell Bell. All right, a lot to chew on there. Who is the next? Which current offensive lineman, if any, will be next to get another contract from the Steelers? Here's the thing about Dan Moore Jr. If Dan Moore Jr. is a guy, that's going to be a very modest contract, you would think, unless they think he can really be, this team starting right tackle for years beyond, come time.
Yeah, but I mean, if they're basically deciding between our long-term future of Moore or Okorafor, and they're giving Moore a deal with the intention of he's going to replace Okorafor, then it's going to be some decent money to be a starting right tackle in the NFL. I don't know. It's a really good question. I hadn't thought about that much. I think this year will be, pretty telling and all of that. I mean, Okorafor, has always been, average, but they do like him. They kept him around this long, so. And they gave him a long-term deal, a year or 2 ago. So I'm not really sure on that one.
Yeah, I don't know which way I would lean on that as well either. Who is next to get another? If we're just talking about another contract from the Steelers, regardless of it being highly lucrative or not, I think Dan Moore Jr. might be a decent bet.
Because they're up at the same time. They're free agents after next year. Am I correct in that?
Right? After
2024?
Yeah, after 2024.
I know Moore is. Yeah, so it's going to be like they're going to give probably one contract to one of those guys to be the right tackle, or door number 3 of go obviously draft somebody and bring in somebody new, maybe sign more to a backup level type of deal. But next year will be interesting with those 2 guys.
I mean, this team very well at some point next season could draft another tackle as part of the class.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So I don't want to rule that out. But in terms of, contractually, you would not expect both Moore and Okorafor to get new deals from Pittsburgh, correct? Probably one of those guys. And so the question will be who?
Right. Yeah, that's a great. I don't know how that's going to play out as far as the next one there.
This will be important in, I think, determining that answer.
All right. What do you think about his answers about all-time vote for Hardy Nickerson or Thomas Everett?
And that was the most underrated, he had said?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's probably a bit more familiar with those guys than I am. But I had the terrible take the other day on some of my personal lists, I think even by the own fan base, of Deshae Townsend. I think Frank Lewis was super underrated. So those are kind of 2 names that come to mind. He asked about the current day Steeler who feels underrated. I think Levi Wallace. I mentioned him. Mason Cole. I think those 2 guys might get my vote right now.
All right, Steve Novakovic writes in, I'm getting amused by all the whining and fussing over the recurring point from Depot readers that goes, what are we doing drafting Kenny Pickett when we all know we have to draft a clone of Patrick Mahomes in order to win a Super Bowl in the next 40 years? He says everybody needs to settle down comparing Kenny's likely 12-year NFL career to a single game means we are now only 5 minutes into the first quarter of that game. Now, no one can know enough at this point to get all worked up. I do think it's worth talking about Kenny based on what we've seen so far. He says, I don't have questions about his size, mobility, ability to make throws needed by an NFL quarterback, or hand size. I saw enough last year to think he is checking those boxes adequately. The remaining critical factors, in my opinion, are less physical, tangible. He says his ability and propensity to work and study hard, and his ability to deal with mental pressure that comes with being an NFL quarterback. He says, I've heard stories about Kenny being a very hard worker and watches a lot of film. I think I've seen an impressive amount of poise and confidence from him in critical moments in games such as those game-winning drives last year. I think he has the it factor as is an exceptionally cool-headed quarterback. At all the best quarterbacks have that. He says, what overall factors do you think are the most important, that are most in question as it relates to Kenny Pickett? I think the last sentence is the question there, because I have no concerns about Kenny the worker, Kenny the mental capacity, Kenny the kind of those outlying kind of intangibles and all like that. He's an accurate passer, yada, yada. What do you think are the factors that are most important, that are most in question as it relates to Kenny Pickett?
I guess it's hard for me to think about one specific tangible trait that might be lacking. I mean, I think obviously the physical tools aren't off the charts in terms of the super, big arm. Not that you need to have that, but just talking out loud. The question with Pickett has always been, what's that ceiling? I think he'd become a very good quarterback, a top 10, top 12. But the concern is, to bring this thing full circle, when we talk about the Netflix quarterback series, is he Kirk Cousins 2.0 in the sense of a really good quarterback, but is he going to get you over the hump against the Patrick Mahomes of the world? And so that's a very general thought. I don't spend a lot of time thinking about that. I'm more focused on the here and now and the, progression and all that kind of stuff. But that is the looming concern with Pickett. He could become a top 10 quarterback. Can he become a top 5 quarterback? Yeah, it's a tougher path. And if you can't become a top 5 quarterback, what are your odds of winning a Super Bowl?
I don't. And look, I get his first point there too. It's way too early to be freaking out about anything, in my opinion. Once again, my thought on Kenny Pickett is I want to see quarterbacks play those first, 20 games or so. And I really think with, the way his rookie season went, and then now getting a reset as being the starter now to start his second season, and having all that BS that goes along with the rookie season behind him and all like that. I think we look at this, and like I said earlier in the show, I cannot be more excited to see what happened. In 2000, regardless of what happens with the team, playoffs, non-playoffs, 7-10, 10-7, whatever. I'm excited about being able to learn. I think we're going to get a good look and a good idea of what Kenny Pickett is and isn't in his second season. And I think first 6 games in particular, I'm really looking forward to diagnosing.
Yeah, that's where I'm at. I'm just kind of here where we're at right now. It's a big year number 2 for Pickett to see what that jump looks like now that he's the guy, now that he's been in the NFL system. He knows what it's all about. And that's really where my focus is at, less so on, the bigger picture question of can he become Mahomes and Burrow and all that kind of stuff.
What if you are listening to this and you're emphatic either way? Kenny Pickett's going to be the next great Steelers quarterback and lead them to championships, or you're on the other end of the spectrum at this point from what you've seen, and you've said, oh, Kenny's not going to make it. He's going to be a bust and all like that. The complexion of all that could change in the first 6 games to the totally opposite,
Right. And I understand the reader was saying, because he was saying, why are we even talking about, is he Mahomes or Burrow? I think he's basically in agreement with us saying, we need to just focus on where he's at now in the second year type of stuff. So I don't want to insinuate otherwise. I know we had an email, I think, last episode that talked about can Pickett become that. But yeah, I mean, that I'm with you. Let's just focus on where he's at the first 6 weeks of year number 2 and take it from there.
Mike Schertzer, right, saying, guys, love the show and listen religiously. I think you both suggested that reasonable expectation for a successful season would be a playoff victory. If we assume that the AFC division winners are KC, Buffalo, Bengals, and Jacksonville, which of these teams do you think we'd have a reasonable chance of beating on the road? He says, I know the Steelers measure success by trophies, but I think making the playoffs is a more reasonable expectation for this team. I just can't think that we'd have a good chance of beating one of those four teams without a significant improvement at quarterback on offense, which I hope comes by the end of the year. Thanks, Mike. Look, get in the tournament, man. Get in the tournament. Obviously, if KC, Buffalo, and Cincy are all there as three of those four teams, those would be tough chores for sure. Of the four selections you gave me, I would think that Jacksonville would give you the best opportunity to win one of those four games, but a lot happens along the season and teams might come limping into the playoffs or whatever. But just if you're giving me those four teams, I would choose Jacksonville.
Same, probably. I think not ideally, but what is realistic to me, most realistic, is for Pittsburgh to become the number 5 seed this year, top wild card spot, play the number 4 seed, which was most likely probably the AFC South team in Jacksonville. You're going into Jacksonville, not hostile territory. Pittsburgh, I think, would represent themselves well there. Obviously, the last meeting in the playoffs against Jacksonville did not go in Pittsburgh's favor. The Bengals, too. Those are always good games. The Bengals are a more talented team. Their offense is super potent. Their defense underrated, but, Pittsburgh's hung tough with them. So, as you said, get in the playoffs and you take it from there. But the Bengals or Jaguars.
All right. One last one. David Ricard's on Claypool. I'm curious if either of you have an opinion on how and why Claypool went from rookie sensation to cast off to Chicago. I love the trade and I'm excited to see Joey Porter Jr., but I can't help but think back to the excitement we had going into Claypool's second year. I've been under the assumption that he didn't continue to work to the professional level required to continue progressing, but that isn't supported with much objective evidence outside of what I saw during games. Look, my thought, and I took hell for this, was Claypool was never that guy that's going to win emphatically over the top when it came to uncontested throws. And it turns out that so far that's been the MO on him. Second, when you look back at rookie season, the thing that sticks out is he was making his share of contested catches at that point, but those kind of went away in his last season with him.
Yeah, the question is why. Because he was super productive. He had a 4 touchdown game against the Eagles. We're going crazy about this guy. What changed so dramatically from year one to a year later, where he's now, basically public enemy number 1 in Pittsburgh?
Well, I can't sit here and say his professional level required to continue progressing wasn't there because I wasn't there every day.
Right.
I didn't see it, but it did feel. Looking back in the rearview mirror, I kind of wonder if they kind of did wonder if he's all in or not.
Yeah, I understand. And that's, obviously tricky territory. And you're always careful of, not accusing a player of, not having great work habits without more concrete evidence. But yeah, I'm not really sure what the answer is. I think it's a really good question. I think sometimes as a rookie, when you're a really, athletically gifted, physically gifted guy like Claypool, it's a bit easier out of the gate. And then once NFL teams start to kind of figure you out and know what your game's about, and they adjust to you, and maybe you don't adjust back that well. And then what happened, at least last year, was they drafted Pickens, and he was that, true Z-type contested catch receiver that Claypool was not. And so Claypool tries to go to the slot, and he was and is not a slot receiver in terms of nuance and feel and precise route running. And so he just kind of never really had a home in Pittsburgh at the end there because Pickens was the outside guy and Claypool was not a slot receiver. So I don't have a great answer for really what changed other than to say that sometimes guys have really good rookie seasons that are athletically gifted, and the NFL then adjusts to them and they can't adjust back.
If he's going to stay in the NFL, is it as a big slot guy? Is he going to have to become and maybe not necessarily an every down guy, but is that how he's going to stay in the NFL?
I don't think so. I don't know exactly how Chicago wants to use him this year, but I think if he's going to stick, he's going to have to become a better contested catch guy. And because he's 6'4", like 230, he's a guy that should be able to win on the outside. Dude runs 4.42.
But he hasn't yet, and he really didn't. He really didn't at the college level either.
Right, I understand, but I mean, the traits are there. He's got to put it together. I mean, I don't know what traits he has as a big slot receiver, other than being a big guy. I don't think he has the feel to work inside. I think he has to figure it out as a Z receiver.
Okay, I think we got caught up here on the questions here. Anything else you'd like to add as we get out of here? You're going on vacation next week, so I'm going to have to get Josh or Jonathan or somebody in for a couple of shows next week here. You figure out where you're going?
Not really. Anyone want to recommend anything? Feel free to do so. But yeah, I'll figure something out. So you guys get a break from me. I'm sure everybody's going to be happy about that.
I'll miss you.
All right.
Make sure you get a temporary Netflix subscription and watch that while you're gone. Spend
my week watching Marcus Mariota prepare. Yeah.
All right, we'll be back on Tuesday with the show. We'll have Josh, John, somebody on to fill in a couple of shows next week there for Alex. So in the meantime, you can follow me on Twitter at Steelers Depot. Follow Alex on Twitter at Alex_Kozora. Follow the show at Terrible Podcast. Email the show, theterriblepodcast@gmail.com. Like what we do and want to donate to the cause, SteelersDepot.com. Hit the donate button up right navigational bar. Also, if you like an ad-free version of the site, SteelersDepot.com. Hit the ad-free button up right navigational bar. Until next week, as always, thanks for listening to the Terrible Podcast with Dave and Alex.